Hello and welcome to the Ghibli Rewatch series of the Overly Animated Podcast, where we'll be going through every Studio Ghibli movie chronologically from the beginning. I'm Dylan Hysen, and today I'm joined by Delaney Stovall.
Hey, y'all.
And Maddie Potter.
Hey.
Yes, the Ghibli Rewatch series. Join us in rewatching or watching for the first time every Studio Ghibli movie now that they're available for streaming for the first time on HBO Max in the United States and Netflix in most places the rest of the world. We'll be doing a new podcast every Wednesday as we go through the whole Ghibli catalog. Chronologically, you find us at overlyanimated.com. Find all the contact links there. I'm a Ghibli expert and we'll be joined by co-hosts with a variety of Ghibli experience this week. Two co-hosts with lesser Ghibli experience, so that we'll see how that goes. And full spoilers for this movie, My Neighbor Totoro, and vague spoilers for the rest of the Ghibli catalog, but nothing serious if you're going through for the first time. So yes, My Neighbor Totoro this week. And last thing we'll discuss both subbed and dubbed. Watch whatever you want. So don't need to have seen either to listen. But we're going to get into My Neighbor Totoro. Very excited for this one. Probably a big anticipated discussion here on one of the most iconic Ghibli movies. In 1988, this is the next entry from Hayao Miyazaki. I love learning how long it took each movie to make. Apparently this movie took 8 months to make, which is insane. Although this is a shorter one. It was, as discussed extensively last week's Ghibli podcast, was released as a double feature with Grave of the Fireflies. Which turned out to be okay. You didn't.
No, Dylan. What?
You learned it. Yeah, we covered it. You're late to the game on this one. Considering how strange of a pairing this was not the biggest success right away. And so it took a few years for Totoro to become what is probably one of the most beloved films ever in Japan. It is set in the 1950s in Japan, very much reflective of Miyazaki's childhood, which we'll talk about, featuring some of his most iconic creatures of all time. And like I said in the beginning, this might be the most iconic Ghibli movie and one of the most beloved movies of all time in general. You know, Spirited Away probably the other contender for that, but you know, this is the Ghibli thing you get in the beginning. Totoro comes on there. Everyone's always talking about Totoro, so we'll be talking about it more here and in depth, get into everything about it. So let's start with we've had both of you on before, so Delaney, newer to the Ghibli movies, but I believe you've seen Totoro before. So what's your history with this movie and what did you think of it when you rewatched it now?
So I knew Totoro from all of the merch, everyone you'd go into Hot Topic and there's Totoro.
Yeah, that's why
stuff.
You know Totoro from Hot Topic.
Yeah, there you go. But
it's
no,
true. There is a lot there, though.
There is a lot, and so that was kind of my idea of like what you were saying. This is the most beloved Ghibli film. There's all this stuff with Totoro on it, and I didn't watch it until 2 years ago. My roommate at the time, it's one of his favorite movies ever, and it's his favorite Ghibli movie. And so he was like, we should all watch it together. So it was me, my fiance, and him, and we watched it, and I loved it. And also, it's nice, this it's his favorite movie, and he wanted to share it with us. So it's that's always really nice to share that with someone. And I can see why, it's a lot of people's favorite Ghibli movie. And then to rewatch it, I don't think I got it the first time. You watched and I don't mean by got, I mean what Totoro's about. Because the first time I was watching it, it was, granted, there's also a different mindset when I'm just watching things for pleasure versus watching things, to deconstruct.
Yeah.
And so, but it was cute. I really enjoyed it, and I think I was more focused on the mom stuff than maybe kind of the other stuff that was going on, what it all meant. And so I was able to really get more into that when I was watching it the second time. And it was just as enjoyable. Honestly, so this is really my first time rewatching a Ghibli movie. I'm going to rewatch Spirited Away, but that movie is so long and it's going to hurt me to do it. even though it's a great movie. It's so long. So I think it's really helpful to rewatch Ghibli movies. Like, I had watched Nausicaa. That was the first time I've ever seen Nausicaa. And then, so, to really get, because there's Nausicaa where it's like, it hits you in the face with what it's about and the themes of the movie. And then Totoro is a much subtler movie, which I think can be said of quite a few of Studio Ghibli movies. So I think it was really like helpful for me to watch it again and to, because, the first time you watch it, you're like, I have no idea what's going on. Like, what are we doing? And then so it helps to, because,
yeah.
And I talked about this on the Nausicaa pod, like you're kind of thrown into this world where you don't really understand what's going on. And that's one of those things with like Studio Ghibli movies, which he does such a great job of like, every time it's a completely new world. You have no idea what's going on. You don't know like where we are, what time it is, like who you're going to see. And so, the first 5-10 minutes, where you're just seeing the landscape and you're getting used to like what's going on, like where we are. So I really enjoyed it.
Okay. Yeah. Spirited Away, 2 hours, 5 minutes. Not that long, but it's one of those ones I think that feels a lot longer. Definitely not.
Yeah.
We talked about
it's
that.
just like slower pace.
So we'll be very excited when we get to Spirited Away. But interesting about the rewatching, and I endorse that. I've seen all the Miyazaki movies multiple times, and you get something new, I think, a lot of times from rewatching them. The opposite end of the spectrum from rewatching is Maddie, who just watched this movie literally just now. So we're getting your fresh reactions to Totoro, Maddie.
I literally stopped watching 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, you're bragging about that?
No, I'm not bragging about it. I'm saying I've made these decisions, Dylan, and I kind of hate myself for it.
No, it's great. We get your fresh reactions, so tell us.
Oh, yeah, they're really good. I want to say that I knew a lot about Totoro before I came into it. It's just, it's just a very, like, I got through osmosis, just people talk about it. I've seen what Totoro looks like on a bunch of merch and a bunch of, it's the Ghibli logo in later movies that I've seen, and I knew that it was going to be not very plot driven, I guess is how what I want to say about that. And even then, it still was very, very loose in a way that I was not expecting. There was just and I don't mean that it was like directionless. I just mean that it was very not driven by plot in any way. Like it was just, here's these kids, here's this new place, and it really captured that excitement. And I was really wait, what am I saying, Dylan? What was your question?
Just what were your reactions to Totoro? We didn't get into specific question.
I just want to make sure I was saying the right
I
thing.
agree with you that there's no plot backing to the whole movie. There's no plot structure. Yeah. Sorry, I just realized I wasn't clear on the question. But the music really got me again. Like in Castle in the Sky, the music was just incredible. The brass again was very, very subdued. There were muted, I think, trumpets through the movie, but there weren't a lot of brass in general. There was some at the end with the cat bus, but a lot of the music was just really, really light. I think there was even some recorders in there at parts. It just felt very childish, very light, very young, and it just always kept this air of just like nothing really has these huge stakes. It was just exciting, adventurous, and it was really exciting. And I also noticed that there was just a lot of times in this movie when there just wasn't music. They just wanted to give you like these sounds of like this countryside with rain and wind just passing through everything. And I really enjoyed that as well. They really kept things they were very careful about how much music they used in this movie. Yeah. I agree. That's definitely noticeable parts, and we'll talk about the score. I believe one of Hisayashi's most notable scores as well. So good to highlight there. Yeah. Sounds like you are. We'll develop opinions maybe as we go. We'll have more to comment on. It's probably a lot to be thrown right into this and then talk about it. Even though this is one of the lighter ones, but
I feel like I have a grasp on what I feel about it. It's just what I just don't know where to start, I guess.
Okay. Well, we'll start somewhere and we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. No, I know you'll give me a direction, Dylan.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, we could adapt to the direction we go in, but I feel like we're pretty open at the moment. And my thoughts on Totoro. So I love Totoro. I saw this movie originally as a teenager. Wasn't one that immediately jumped out to me. So maybe I agree with you guys. What I'm sensing from you guys, maybe first viewing, I'm more into some of the more epic fantasy of Miyazaki. This is his most quiet movie until maybe later. So I liked it. Definitely captured by Totoro and the creatures, but I think it's taken me until more recently to really love this movie, and this played really well for me on rewatch this time. I mean it's not whatever X viewing this is, and it isn't probably an easy one to rewatch. Under an hour and a half. Apparently the movie was originally an hour and stretched it a little bit with some things as it went on. But this movie is just my big reaction this viewing is just this movie is so joyful. Like I was so happy watching it. Like I got joy from this movie that is so rare from watching anything. That's what I'll say about Totoro. Like there's like a dramatic like part towards the end, which is in service of being the magical resolution, which brings on even more joy. But just vast majority of this movie is some of the most joy I think you'll experience watching anything. That's kind of my Totoro take. Everything is so magical. There is a lot going on here. It's like a perfect mix of like light fare with a lot of depth behind it. We have plenty to talk about. There's certainly enough depth. I'm sitting here. I got my little Totoro from the Ghibli Museum, the blue middle one. I got my suit sprite, the one of the black dudes, the little black dudes, and I recently got a cat bus, so I'm decked out with the Totoro stuff here. Very excited to talk about everything from Totoro, including all these creatures. But I don't know. Do you guys have that same reaction? That's kind of what I'm wondering. Is this joy I got from this movie, Delaney? What's maybe your emotions watching Totoro again?
No, I was like that. Was hoping we could get into that more. Like that's how I felt watching it. That was, I think, one of the strongest takeaways for me watching the movie was just how happy it made me feel. Like I just, you just settle in, and it's just so, like you said, it's such a joyful, and it's not, and I don't want to say that it's directionless or there's no plot. It's just, this is an extremely emotional movie. And like, I kind of want to say that the quote unquote plot is it's kind of like an impressionist. Impressionists would like look at a scene and like that's how they would make their art. Well, that's kind of how this is. It's like an impressionist like movie about, and it's, child's emotion. And it's really, I think they do a great job like of like kind of the ebb and flow throughout the movie and like following Mei and Satsuki, and it's just like just magical overall. Not just like we're gonna keep saying magical because there's legit magic, but like, but also because it's just they don't really make movies like this anymore. Like there has to be a plot, there has to be something horrible that happens, or there has to be some sort of goal. But we just get to exist in this world with these kids. And obviously things get a little bit, heavier at the end when Mei goes missing. But still there's that, it's not that the movie gets, it does get sad, but it just picks it up a little bit, I guess. Like it just deepens. It's not, I don't like it, just the movie just makes you feel good. It's like junk food for your eyes.
It's like junk food for your eyes. What about like a healthy snack?
Okay, it can be a healthy snack, I guess.
A light snack because it's short.
Like a snack, okay.
Junk food, I like it makes you feel. It just
makes you feel good. Like it's just.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Yeah,
you can't watch this movie without smiling. Like it's so beautiful, and the kids are so much fun. Even the dad, like. Because the dad is like the most useless human
What? Don't be mean to the dad. I was gonna say this is like the best dad ever.
Oh, he's a great dad. I mean, there's a reason
you don't
Mei
see him
disappeared.
doing a lot.
You don't, but that's also because he has a job and like a wife in the hospital.
Yeah, Dad's going through a lot. Everyone's going through a lot here.
Everyone's going through the most.
They're holding on to it. We'll talk. Maddie, what parts of this movie, just watching it, were there any parts that brought out that sense of joy Delaney and I are talking about?
Yeah, totally. Like the whole movie did that for me. But I think that what really like started that emotion for me was at the start of the movie. There was this part where Mei and Satsuki are looking over the bridge into this little like creek that's flowing underneath, and they say, "Oh, there's a fish," and it's just the way it's animated and everything about it is just so gorgeous. I don't know. It just it really helped me understand what the movie was going to be just from that one little moment, that it was just going to be these kids being so excited about exploring their surroundings, exploring the house, exploring the woods behind their house. And as you brought up earlier, I'm assuming this has to do with Miyazaki's childhood. Like this was similar to his childhood based on that, what you said.
Yeah, I think you could definitely call this heavily influenced by his childhood, kind of a magical reimagining of his childhood.
Yeah,
and I think it's you really feel that how real and the emotions he brings to it that he probably experienced, but it's probably a lot more uplifting version though of his childhood.
Well, there's just so much wonder.
Yeah, that's a good point. It really captures the wonder. And a big thing we haven't talked about yet, which I will get into more depth, but the movie told through the children's perspective. This is maybe not, and that's why, maybe we don't see the dad doing a lot. It's whatever the kids see the dad doing, basically. He's probably doing more than that. But we really see it through their eyes, which I think a lot of modern animated media imitates. And it's not that this is that atypical. Like, sure, there's kid protagonists in a lot of other Miyazaki movies, but I think this one like really sticks to the kid's perspective the entire movie. And that maybe leads to this sense of wonder and stuff that we're talking about. I want to seed in this like overarching kind of genre or description of the movie that I think leads us into a few topics, but this movie is a combination of humans, nature, and the supernatural. Is kind of, I think, how you'd sum up this movie. The humans in the family and the kids, the nature in the tree and the woods, and just the general countryside where they are, and the supernatural in Totoro, Cat Bus, the Soot Sprites. I think the movie's Environmentalism, which of course we're talking about a Miyazaki movie, we gotta talk about that, kind of comes from the interplay of these elements. And I do think it's definitely striking how Totoro is, you could definitely call it a slice of life movie. It's very grounded in reality and the experiences of this family as they take this move to the countryside and deal with the mother and the wife being sick. But there's also a consistent, I think, an increasing amount of supernatural elements at play, fantasy elements, that is Miyazaki's no stranger to, but aren't as typically seeded into real life, I would say, as this. He's a lot of like fantasy based movies, but this is the real world, and they're interacting with just supernatural elements that are occurring in the world, in the real world. I don't know, Delaney, having seen, from what other Miyazaki movies you've seen, does this seem different or striking? Just kind of like the kids like find Totoro and they interact with Totoro at the Mei goes into the tree. They see Totoro at the bus stop. How does it compare to what else you've seen?
Well, so to me, it's hard not to compare Totoro with Ponyo, which is one of my favorite Ghibli movies. And
which is a hot take, but I'm glad
which is a hot take.
I'm glad you have that take.
Is extremely hot take. I am the only person who likes Ponyo.
I saw Ponyo. That's what's funny. I saw Ponyo before this movie.
I agree. Ponyo is probably Miyazaki's movie that's most similar to this movie, but he makes it a lot better in life.
And I guess the most striking thing about Totoro, I think, is what really sets it apart from not just his other films, but I mean, I think films in general, and this kind of attitude, like this whole like children and magical creatures. This they are real. But they're also, I think the way they play it up that the adults can't see is, I think, it's now it's an extremely common trope. And, like the adults can't see the magical whatever because, they're not innocent or pure anymore. They don't believe. But it's interesting how they play it up. And because everything in this movie is so subtle. Like, there are a couple moments where, like, Satsuki literally is like, oh, they can't see the cat bus. But other times, it's very much when the smaller creatures are, like, popping in and out when Mei's chasing them. Mm-hmm. Like, she can see them, but the adults can't. And just this... Like, I love, like, one of the most, I think, the things that I really love about this movie are their dad, he's like, oh, we have to go thank the spirit of the forest. You met Totoro. Yeah. And so they go and they pray. And, when they're like, we met Totoro. And he's like, oh my God, that's so great. Like, this is so cool that y'all met Totoro. And there is still that, like, line between, like, are you just a really good dad or do you really believe? Unsure.
Yeah.
Unsure, unclear.
I think he's just a good dad. I don't think for a second he believes it.
Yeah, I think from the child's perspective thing, I think, like, it doesn't really matter from where we're seeing it.
No.
Right? Like, we think we are, at least the surface level reading is he does believe it because that's what the kids are thinking as he says that.
So I think what Miyazaki does so well is that, I was talking earlier, every movie is a new world. Like, it's a brand new, whatever universe Miyazaki has created for this film, and he makes you believe it and you live in it for however long the movie is. And I think that's what's really unique about Totoro is because it's very much the real world, and it's just that little flavor of magic.
Yeah.
It's very, I like the slice of life, the way, like, because it's a slice of life with a little bit of magic.
Oh my God, it is.
Yeah, we don't need to call it a somewhat looked down upon term, much to my chagrin. So we can.
It's not everything. I don't look down upon it. I just realized that you, Dylan, made me watch this, and I know you love this.
Yeah, but like I said, I did connect more originally with the other ones, the more fantasy ones. Let me bring in a quote about this. I'll be bringing quotes here from Susan Napier, author of Miyazakiworld book, and this one's on this kind of human nature and supernatural that I mentioned, which kind of comes from her chapter on Totoro. She says, the first storyboard that Miyazaki made for Totoro was an evocative, slightly surreal image. A young girl waits at a bus stop in the rain, holding a red umbrella, while a strange non-human creature, Totoro, stands beside her. The image would evolve into the film's iconic poster, juxtaposing humanity, nature, and the supernatural, giving equal weight to all three. The tall trees and the rain suggest the mystery and power of nature, while the large non-human form suggests another kind of mystery. Initially, there's only one girl in the movie, and in this image, she gazes calmly, taking both weather and the supernatural visitor in her stride. So this kind of references what I believe to be the most iconic imagery from the movie, which is Totoro and then Mei and Satsuki at the bus stop. And that was the first kind of image Miyazaki created. That's kind of what this movie's based on. And from what I understand of Miyazaki's process, at least later in his life, is he starts from images and an image board rather than like making a script for the movie. It's kind of his unique way of doing things. So he starts with this one image. He'll draw a lot of different images based off this. As he, in his head, he starts to like get the story of the movie there. And then from there, he just like goes straight into the storyboards, which is, from what I understand, a pretty unique process relative to how modern animation is made. But just the iconic, for me, this iconic image and scene in the film at the bus stop, and then showcasing these different elements. I think it just that's maybe where the magic comes from, is its interaction of these fantasy elements within the real world. I think Spirited Away, comparing maybe his two most iconic films, Spirited Away is completely magical as well. It's like a different type of magic, though. It's like a very immersive magic that you jump into this world. Spirited Away, it's like this is firmly rooted in a real place at a real time from memories of Miyazaki in 1950s Japan from where he grew up. And it's like there's some magic, that a different type of magic. When you watch this movie, it's hard to not feel like even more magic to a certain extent from it, of just seeing these elements interact with such a real, grounded kind of landscape, I would say.
Well, it has. I think a lot has, like, it's interesting when we talk about the separation of the human, the nature, and the magical elements, because I think the nature is really what lends itself to a lot of that, the magical, because they intertwine so beautifully, but also this wonder at the tree, the Sukamori forest, and this giant tree that, like, of course a child would be like, well, that has to be a magical tree. It's huge. And so it's fun because, just the commentary about, so the trees, so the nature is its own thing, but then also they play into each other so well. This mystical forest, and especially like the iconic scene, like it's like when they're waiting at the bus stop, everything is so enclosed, like the canopy above them, and even the way the trees are animated. This was something that was striking to me when I watched it the second time, was everything is so beautiful. Like, obviously it's a Ghibli movie. It's gorgeous, but the animation for the trees is different. A lot of the background trees, they don't look real. They're almost not as detailed as everything around them. And I think that has to do with kind of like some of the trees aren't real, but like, when they go on their magical adventure with Totoro, when they're growing their trees. But, this kind of like fade, this like shadowy fading in and out of the background trees, I think, adds to that, the mystery of the forest. And also, like, the forest is also the center of basically the magical activity happening in the movie, because like, it's like, is Totoro the tree? Is he the forest of the tree? Not the forest, the spirit of the forest.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's like kind of the interpretation the dad gives in the movie.
Right.
I would say. I like your pull of the Sukamori forest, I assume, because I have it on the outline, but maybe you got it on your own. That was impressive. I like that analysis of the backgrounds and stuff. That's really interesting. I want to bring, first of all, I want to read this kind of summary, because since we're talking about Totoro's magic, this hits on a lot of things we talk about, and we'll talk about kind of Napier's like synopsis of her Totoro analysis. She says, Totoro's final magic, and the reason why its appeal is so profound and universal, is that it allows us to recover what we have forgotten and to luxuriate in innocence, beauty, and joy, if only for a few transitory moments. So we'll talk about this recover what we have forgotten type of themes that the movie has. But another aspect also from Napier is we want to bring in kind of some of the darker elements later in the movie, or like what the characters are going through, and kind of how the magic relates to that. So kind of first an explanation of that, and then getting into how the fantasy elements tie into that in the movie. She says, on a deeper level, it explores traumatic issues of loss, grief, and the need for recovery or compensation. These issues stem from Miyazaki's own childhood and temporary loss of his mother due to her struggle with tuberculosis, and from the more universal losses that modernity had wreaked upon Japan, especially its countryside. What makes Totoro so remarkable and affecting, however, is that Miyazaki resolves these issues through fantasy, allowing viewers to confront difficult emotions through a filter of enchantment that overlays the darkness with a sense of possibility and joy and transcendence. This combination of darkness and light, processed through a child's perspective, is what strengthens the film's core message. While Totoro expresses far more joy than sadness, the director's ability to interweave challenging emotions throughout the film is what gives its overall optimistic message both nuance and substance. And I agree with that last part. I feel like Totoro doesn't fall into like being too light or anything, because there's this undercurrent of dealing with hard times, both through the kid's mother being sick, and then right away from the kids immediately like their life being upended and then moving to the countryside. And we kind of see how they process that right away in the movie. And all of this is kind of dealt with with good, with positive attitudes from everyone, but with joy in the form of kind of the magic that is encountered. And I like this kind of notion that viewers are confronting difficult things through the magic, overlaying the darkness with this joy. Maddie, how do you think how did it would feel maybe some of the darker undercurrents of the movie and how magic related to them? How did that work for you?
I just think that for me, other than like one or two scenes, the movie just wasn't that dark for me. Like I just didn't. I know that it was supposed to be an undercurrent, like it's supposed to be about these kids and and the mom is in the hospital. But even then, like I just could tell the mom wasn't gonna die because of just
that's good
of the way the movie was going. I think I'm not sure. I'm not sure if how dark I was supposed to be reading that, because I just didn't read it as very dark at all. And I think that colored the way that I ingested the rest of the movie, because it just felt more like this candy-like saccharine-like movie. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like it's just like you need that kind of movie sometimes where it's just really happy and really fun and there's not a lot of stakes going on. That said, there is one scene where they're trying to fish a sandal out of
yes.
And it's like out of nowhere.
Yes, well, the whole part is Mei is missing, and that's a certain amount of darkness to it. But then there's a very tense one where Satsuki gets to identify if the sandal is which means is Mei dead or not.
Yes, and they're just like poking around with a stick, and I'm just like, is this where we are right now? Just that maybe this child is dead?
Maybe.
It just felt very anachronistic with the rest of the movie for me. It didn't line up quite well for me because just the mood of the movie did not fit with any of that. And I don't know if that was I didn't feel like it was in a good way. I felt better when the movie was just being fun.
Yeah, I think all of those are pretty good and typical opinions. I think the parts that work better are like the magical happy parts. And also, you're right. Generally, the movie is very, very happy, like we've said, and it is more of an undercurrent. I think some of these things end up being more subtle, and I think reading the analysis helps with. I think the family they are going through a hard time, and you don't see it based on how they're reacting, but that's just because they're choosing to deal with it in a very positive way. They're able to deal with it in a very positive way. Also, because the dad is probably the best aspect of him, other than like how he reacts to Mei, like saying she saw Totoro, which is above and beyond in terms of instantly believing and validating. I would say it's a very atypical. You see this type of reaction, I think, in movies and stuff. But him kind of like helping the kids cope with this move and with their mom being gone, and it's definitely like not surface level in the movie, but definitely the biggest scene I think where this is apparent is they're in the bath and he is like screaming after there's this like really scary winds and stuff outside, and he's like having the girls scream with him to like ward off their fear. So I think it's like happily they're overcoming, even if it's in a subtle manner. And Delaney, what was your view of any sort of difficult situations, the characters when they're difficult emotions from the movie, and how like the movie dealt with it?
Well, I think one, because of the movie is from the children's perspective. It's very sudden, but you can see it building. Like when I say sudden, it's because everything falls apart all at once. And so I think, one, it's very, and it's not that I didn't, it's not like I watched the movie and I was like, oh, it's from it's not like I'm like amazed that we're talking about it from the children's perspective, but I do think that really has helped me frame more of like what's going on in the movie. Is this and the movie is it's so driven by emotion. So then when things get bad, they get bad because everything is so.
Yeah, it's like heightened. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so hard. Like when they get that, the telegram, and then when And also, it's just this doubt. They don't know what's happening, and no one will tell them. And, you know, their dad's like, oh, I'm going to go see her in the hospital. Well, the kids don't know now. Like, they're now out of the loop. They don't know how their mother's doing. And all that doubt of her being sick comes back. And I think one of the most powerful scenes in the movie is when you finally see Satsuki break down, because she's such a strong, like, force in the film, and she is very much the older sister. She's, you know, helping Mei, and, you know, she seems so sure of herself, and she knows what to do. You know, she's kind of taken on this, you know, not that she's being like the mom, but like she does, you know, she makes everyone food, and she's taken on a lot of responsibility while her mother's been gone. And then when she breaks down, I think for me, that was one of the most powerful scenes in the movie. And of course, that is also when May's like, I'm out. Mei takes off. And I think when I watched the movie the first time, I was so caught up in me being like, oh my God, is the mom going to die? So like, that was like one of those, like, I was so caught up in that I wasn't able to appreciate, you know, talking about how everything gets solved, quote unquote, with the magic. And I think that's just, it really hit me this time when, you know, they get on the cat bus, and the cat bus is like, okay, we found Mei. Well, let's go see your mom, because that's what's wrong. Y'all need to go see your mom, and you know, that doubt needs to go away. And they're able to give her the corn, and everything, you know, turns out okay. So I think it's this interesting, the magic answers questions that no one will answer for the kids. You know, it's kind of like this easy solution because that's what it is. Like, it's this doubt, and, you know, Totoro, being the sweetie that he is like, well, okay, let's go. Sweetie. He's such a sweetie.
Totoro is a sweetie. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Yeah, the magic answers kind of like what life doesn't for these children, in a way.
Right, and that's
what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think that's really it's so satisfying. And I think that's one of the things, this is such a satisfying conclusion to the movie, because they're like, they get home and they're like, done, movie's over. And that's one of those, like, it just feels so good, because, you know, sometimes you watch a movie and you're like, if they would just talk to each other for 30 seconds, this movie would be over. You know, stuff like, you know, there's a lot of like ridiculous conflicts and stories in general sometimes. But then this, you know, that's all they just wanted to see their mom. They wanted to see that she was okay. And so the cat bus took them to her.
Yeah. That's really it.
Can I talk about the cat bus now?
We can talk about the cat bus. Was that your biggest reaction to the fantasy elements?
Dylan,
was to the cat bus?
It was my biggest reaction.
In what way?
I hate the cat bus.
What's wrong with you?
Oh no! Is it too? Is it its evil grin? Yeah, it's creepy. Grin.
No. I'm fine with the outside of it. I hate the inside. I hate
because it's a cat on the inside.
I hate sitting inside the cat bus. It's awful.
It's just how it works.
I don't like it.
I would ride in the cat bus.
I wouldn't. I'd be scared that it like close up and it would like be eating me like it was a trick. It's one of those like supernatural things that eat you. No.
Cat bus is gonna eat you.
I thought it was adorable. I thought all the animation with it, Dylan, was incredible. But I hated Cat Bus on so many levels.
Is it like cat body horror? Is that why?
Yeah.
I can't believe you just said that out loud.
Headlights.
Look, I've never said that phrase before, but I guess it applies.
And you never will again.
Right? Never. Hopefully not. Yeah, we got the. Yeah, so we can come back to the. No, let's go through the creatures. Let's go. It's part of the magic, but I think it's like the most memorable part of the movie is all the creatures. We got the cat bus. I don't think it's like is as innately lovable as a Totoro, but its supernaturalness I think is very apparent. I feel like the cat bus is like Miyazaki comes up with this bus stop image. Totoro's waiting at the bus stop as the initial image of the movie, and it's like, what's Totoro waiting at the bus stop for? He doesn't ride a real bus. Oh, he rides a cat bus. Okay, like, and then it's okay. There's this cat bus. But it's also I assume that's how it went.
He didn't get on the cat bus though, did he?
He gets on the cat bus, yeah.
Yeah, Totoro with the umbrella.
In the beginning. And then at the end, he sends Satsuki on the cat bus to find Mei, too. Cat bus is great. Totoro itself, the titular Totoro, Delaney brought up the merchandise. One of the most heavily merchandised characters in the world, I would say.
Because he's adorable.
Yeah, and they go hard on the Totoro merch. I think he's one of the most known characters probably in the world. I think you see a lot of Totoro here. Definitely see a lot of Totoro in Japan, everywhere. Totoro as the Ghibli mascot. I think you probably understand why watching this movie. Totoro is pretty magical. And he's like, it's interesting that he's magical in a way that I feel like this type of character would not be in current movies and stuff. He has this like creepy grin, also like the cat bus. He's very he like jumps down to like have the raindrops hit the umbrella, and he's like very amused at that. But it's not this overt cuteness or anything. I think it's interesting, but he's very he's great when Mei finds him the first time, and then he takes them on the journey with sprouting the seeds and then into the air. And maybe at his most sweetiness, if that's what he is, Delaney, when he helps at the end with Satsuki. I would say he's very, very accommodating and helpful there. Typically kind of the forest spirit, the spirit type creature is more ambivalent, I would say. Totoro wants to help at the end. That's very nice. Does seem to care about the kids. Gives them the seeds, then helps them sprout the seeds. What's your connection with Totoro, Delaney?
Well, I think, like, we talked about, this movie is from the children's perspective. And I think that's really what sells Totoro, is because when Mei encounters Totoro, I think your first natural response is like, oh God, like, because he's so big, and like, and to see a slumbering beast, like, you're not really sure
at first, yeah.
It's a little scary.
I like the idea of calling Totoro a slumbering beast. I would never use the word beast.
He's slumbering.
Okay.
Mei, he's a troll type character. That's where Mei kind of gets the Totoro name from. Right. And it's also great that Mei names Totoro too.
Oh, and that's the thing. It's Mei's reaction to Totoro that really is like, Mei's like, you are the best thing I have ever seen, and I'm going to take a nap right here. And then you're like, and then of course Totoro's like, okay, we're napping. And also, when Totoro, like, just, it's also interesting because Totoro never speaks. And
he says Totoro.
He does say Totoro, but like, he doesn't talk in the way that a lot of creatures like this would maybe talk in another film.
Yeah.
Like, they're silent, and a lot of the music does the talking. Like, the little tinkles and little, like, it's very soft.
I mean, he doesn't talk like Gigi in the next movie we'll be talking about, He's he is another cat, but he's very very soft. And I feel like
Totoro a cat?
The cat bus is a cat, not Totoro.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So I don't know what animal you call Totoro. You got the medium Totoro and then the little Totoro too.
Are they all Totoros?
So
they're all there. It's not clear. They're probably all Totoros.
Probably.
Yeah.
Because Totoro's like a troll in Mei's book.
Mm-mm.
So your interpretation is this is all made up by Mei. Is that what you're saying, Delaney?
Oh no, I don't see.
That sounded like where you're going with that.
I don't even know how to feel about being called out like this, like just point blank.
If it's from the book, then it's imagined, right? That's what I thought you were saying.
Well, yes, but it's one of those.
The name. That's where she gets kind of the.
Yeah, that's where she gets the name. Yeah, like she's like Totoro, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you met Totoro." And so, granted, he does say, like, that's something I missed on my first watch was the idea that the book not that the book's a big deal or anything, but like the idea that Mei had been reading about Totoro and then met Totoro. Well, when I watched it the first time, I was just like, oh yeah, he says his name is Totoro.
Yeah, she's interpreting based on what she's
Right,
experienced.
because he doesn't speak.
Yeah, I will say there's a whole conspiracy theory involving Totoro where
what?
Where,
wait. There's a conspiracy theory for this movie of all movies?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, if you get big enough, you get a conspiracy theory where it's like everyone's dead basically in the movie, and this is like some like the mom dies when the Mei actually dies in the lake. You know, there's all the you know,
That's such a boring conspiracy theory, because that's just the same conspiracy theory for like almost every movie. It's actually all in heaven.
Yeah, it's darker when you apply it to the most happy movie ever, but it's
true.
No, the Studio Ghibli said not true, so it's not.
I mean, Dylan, did they really get the dark? I just remember this was tied with Grave of the Fireflies. The darkness is there. Like, that's where the darkness is.
That's where the darkness is. Yes,
they released them together so that they weren't nearly just to make it a little bit better, that they hurt you. When you watch Grave of the Fireflies.
Were they like a double feature, or were they like...
You watched them both, yeah.
Wait, which one was first?
Yeah, we talked about this last podcast. We don't know. They probably switched it up or something at some point.
Okay, I hope it was Grave of the Fireflies first, so you end with Totoro.
That's what the general consensus seems to be.
Sorry to keep bringing you back to that, Dylan.
Both 90-minute movies. I would say Grave of the Fireflies is the most depressing movie I've seen, and I might say this is the happiest movie I've seen. So it is the craziest combination. So we got Totoro, we got Kappas. How about the suit sprites or the dust bunnies? I think the official subtitles call them dust bunnies. Maddie, I know you watched the dub, which we can talk about too.
I wouldn't be able to tell you what they call them in the dub, but now that you've said dust sprites, that's all I can think. Like,
I like suits. I like suit sprites as the name. That's my preferred name.
But so is that what it's out there in the dub? The soot sprites?
They're dust bunnies in the sub. I don't remember.
They're like dust sprites or soot sprites. They use something like that. They say
all of them are valid, and they come back in.
All of them are valid.
In Spirited Away, of course. These soot sprites.
Aren't they in Howl's Moving Castle too? Or am I?
I don't think so.
I guess. Sorry.
Similar-ish creatures. Anyway, Matt, do you have any takes on the soot sprites, Maddie?
Those are the one thing that I questioned whether they're real or not, because they really only, like, we see them with Mei, and then they just, and they're in the house that's just not, like, it just seemed like that they're trying to make a game out of, like, catching the dust that's in this old house. That's what it really feels like to me. But I like the idea of it. They really add this really, like, fun energy to the first, like, bit of the movie. Also, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm backing up a sec. I needed to bring this up. Totoro doesn't show up for 30 minutes, Dylan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He just doesn't show up for 30 minutes. And
suit sprites anchor the movie until then.
They anchor the movie for like 30 minutes, and there's nothing. There's no magic. It's just the kids and some soot sprites that I at least wasn't quite sure if they were real or not.
They're more, they validate the later magic, but the soot sprites, it's like it's the child's eyes, they're leaving the house, and it's like it is unclear if they're just like the dirt in the house. They're probably symbolic of certain things, but
like just making games out of stuff, like just everything, like when they were running through the house and they were going up these places, and whenever they were alone, just the two of them, they were just playing games no matter what it was, and there always seemed to be something magical to play with.
What do you think of that approach to the movie, of maybe starting off more grounded and then ramping up kind of the fantasy elements as it goes? I
like it. I liked the way we ramped up. I think that we went a little too far at the end. I think I honestly would have liked it to stay a little more grounded at the end. I think having the magical things actively affect the story in some way takes away from the magic of whether this is real or not. I dislike the idea that Cat Bus is real for sure. I like being able to. Well,
yeah, you're just upset that in this movie's interpretation of our world, Cat Bus exists. Yeah. You might have to enter the Cat Bus.
Yeah. To be fair, just so I'm clear, the Cat Bus is very cute. I just don't want to ride in it. But I think that the movie is better up until that point, because everything is just so through the children's eyes, and it doesn't really affect the story, because they have that dream-like sequence where they make all the tree grow outside the house, and then they wake up and the trees are just sprouted. Like, I like that. I like that version of it more than them actually taking the cat bus to the hospital.
Yeah, let's talk about the ending a little bit. Miyazaki often has either controversial or interesting, like very open-ended, more interesting in endings. Not necessarily always open-ended, but they're one. I feel like we've talked about the ending of every one of his movies so far. So let's talk about this one. Here's a quote from Susan Napier. Related to the ending. Miyazaki's decision to go for a magical resolution to real-life trauma underlies one of the the film's key messages, that belief in the powers of nature and the imagination will give us the strength to go beyond ourselves and transcend the traumas of daily life. Satsuki's choice when she confronts what might be Mei's sandal and the real possibility of her death is not to turn to the villagers for comfort or help, not to turn towards prayer or religion. Instead, Miyazaki has her bypass a Shinto shrine to turn toward nature and the fantastic in the form of the long leafy tunnel leading to Totoro. Her journey down the tunnel can be seen as her decision to travel back into the faith and innocence of childhood, and equally important to the world of the imagination. Her own creative reserves allow her to find her sister. So I think it's an ending that certainly would play into the overall, like, what we're talking about with nature and magic, and I like this bringing in imagination to it, and it's like kind of agency to Satsuki, and she's making the choice and figuring out how to solve this herself. I find this, at least on this viewing, I found this it's certainly very striking and feels a little different than what we've done. I'll say that in terms of the ending. I can totally see why it might not work for some people. I found it to be very like the tragedy leading right up into the magical resolution was just like very cathartic and very, very happy. Like I found that worked really well for me this time. I'm not sure I've had that exact reaction in the past, I'll say. And I like the thematic implications of it as well. I like reinforcing that all of this is real. That's kind of what the ending specifically does. At the end, they go visit the mom in the hospital. They leave her the corn, and then you see this. So thereby, you see proof, kind of, that this is what happened. They're kind of watching over it, but you see this proof that it is real. And I think that like reinforces the sense of wonder, the child's perspective, and the magic of it all. You know, like. Sure, there's some open-endedness, as this only the children ever interacting with all these fantasy elements, but their perspective is kind of validated by the end of the movie. What do you think?
I wasn't trying to say that, like, I don't want this to be real. I just like the idea that it is ambiguous, that it is, like, the way they affect the world is through means that you can question whether it actually helped anything, whether it actually did anything. And I don't, but them actually being real, I have no problem with that. I am happy that they are real and that these kids did find this magical stuff in the forest. It feels really strange to have these magical creatures that are just kind of about and doing their own thing to suddenly just actively help the main characters. It just feels counter to how they were acting earlier in the movie.
I agree. It goes against our expectations, kind of like I said. Like, spirits are generally not helping or being, they're generally pretty impartial. And that's kind of how they're presented. Totoro's presented. I mean, he's very neutral. Like, he does things that the kids enjoy, but I think you can still interpret it him just being kind of a force of nature. But at the end, he specifically helps. And I agree. It is different and it's striking. And, I think Miyazaki always goes for these types of endings. You know, I think the ending of Nausicaa, very optimistic, very uplifting. Feels, some people might question it. I think he goes for the bold, kind of notable type ending, even if it's not what you'd expect, even if you might not end up liking it, even if you might like it later, you might not like it at some point. That's kind of my interpretation currently, and we'll see if it's reinforced as we keep going through his movies. But I feel like it's the the third bold ending for Miyazaki in a row that we've covered here. Delaney, what was your reaction quickly to the ending this viewing?
So, like, talking about these bold endings, and I think this has a lot to do with Miyazaki's worldview and this hopefulness at the end of, the hopefulness at the end of Nausicaa, the hopefulness at the end of this movie. And really, for me, we're talking about, like, I'm a sucker for the whole, like, children are they're innocent. They're they can see things that the adults cannot because they believe. And so I really enjoy that, and that they're rewarded at the end, but this, like, not only did Totoro help them, but they also, like, they were companions for Totoro. And so just this, like, their sense of wonder and this, and when Satsuki, she has to be so responsible this whole movie. And then when she finally breaks down, and then, like you were saying, where she runs away from the villagers, because, that's kind of this, like, and the Napier quote, this going back to innocence, running back and choosing childhood and asking Totoro for help. I think this is, talking, and also the themes of, like, modernity in Japan at the time, and this going back to innocence. And I think that's really what, for me, I think it's a really powerful ending, and, like, it's very satisfying that they get their magical help, and it's real because the children believe, and it is real because it's real, but also, like, there's this thing that the children can experience that the adults cannot.
Yeah. I think, this movie makes probably the best use of that trope that I've seen, and probably does not invent that trope, like we constantly say with influences of Ghibli films, but it certainly rebroadcasts it in a wide sense for later children's media to use a lot, I would say. I think the ending feels very Miyazaki. He goes for the happier, more optimistic, more good sense of the world type things. That's kind of like how he's trying. He wants to see good people in his movies, and he wants to see good things happen. I think we've read some quotes of him kind of alluding to that fact. And then in I think what's notable, though, is a lot of times his environmentalism, quickly touching on the recurring Miyazaki theme, ends up being a very pessimistic view. Like, you see Nazca is the end result of the humans completely destroying the planet. I think we see a lot of selfish humans, and the environment maybe in Spirited Away, certainly in Mononoke, so, like, selfish humans, like, destroying everything. Here's Totoro, reinforcing this maybe being the happiest Miyazaki movie. Also, I think the most optimistic. He's very optimistic sense of environmentalism in this movie, which is kind of Totoro representing the forest and the interactions, these positive interactions between humans and nature, I would say, as through with the kids interacting with Totoro. Quote from Napier: "More sustainable and beneficial approach to the natural environment in Japan has gone beyond pop culture to become a rallying point for governmental and environmental organizations. The notion of a creature such as Totoro, a spirit who lives in the woods near a village and interacts benignly with humanity, suggests the possibility of a revitalized relationship between humanity and nature." So that's kind of my sense of this movie's perspective towards nature. You have no villains kind of destroying the forest. Don't really have those type of selfish human characters indicative, which are present in most of his other works. And I do think that kind of enhances the joy and the optimism I feel like that you get from this movie. Maybe this is what he wants, what he's advocating for in his other parables.
I agree that you're saying. I just have a question about the dub now, Dylan, because they had the part in the middle where they go to the big tree, and the dad says, this tree grew back when people were friends with nature. I don't know how that was translated, like what that was in the sub.
Yeah. It sounds about right.
Okay. It just felt very. It was a very pointed thing to say, but the rest of the movie didn't really seem to think that these people were living against nature. It seemed to, like, really make the house that was falling apart and going back to nature this really exciting thing for the kids. Like, it didn't seem that things were like nature was bad or things nature
well,
was
at least they're acting positively towards nature.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because this movie is the fantasy of going back to nature for Miyazaki. He's moving away from I won't read the full quote, but a summary of like 80s Japan being the bubble period where he feels like materialism is taking over and people are losing their sense of natural connection and their connection with past Japan, very Miyazakian kind of notions. So this movie is him going back to his childhood and fantasizing about like this time when there was a very positive interaction with nature and with the countryside is another big thing. We'll see this from a few Ghibli movies. Only Yesterday coming up very notably of this notion of the cities ramping up and you want to go back to the countryside to experience nature in its full in its full lens. You want to experience older Japanese culture. This movie describes as a pastoral utopia. Certainly a big aspect of this, which is heavily played up, I think, in the beginning of the movie. That is interesting, but probably even in those times they would say things like that. I don't remember exactly what that was. Delaney, what any response to the environmentalism discussion?
Well, I think because I think it's interesting to talk about this in the framework of Miyazaki's other works, because you have Nausicaa and it was completely destroyed. And so that the struggle in Nausicaa is the response to that. But here it just simply is. This is enjoyment. This is, the pastoral utopia. Like this is, everything is so joyful and happy because this is where we are. We're in the countryside and we have these gorgeous shots of the rice paddies, and we have several scenes where we see people harvesting the vegetables. And we have that, and that scene with Granny and the kids, and they're like, oh, well, if your mother eats my vegetables, she'll get better. And also like just this, in the opening sequence, there's this very, I think, pointed scene of like when they're going through the city, or like when they're in like just this, like the difference between where they live and like, like a town. And so it's really interesting, like this exploration to its, like basically Nausicaa is like worst case scenario and this is best case scenario.
Yeah, it feels that way, I think so. We'll see how the future movies start to treat these Miyazaki's view of humans and the environment. Interested in maybe see how that's approached in Kiki's. I don't know if it's as explicitly as some of these other movies.
I also think that this movie has a lot to say about like community, because there's this big emphasis on Granny, who's not even their grandmother, like taking care of Mei and stuff like that. Like people in the country here all seem to be rather close-knit, despite the fact that there's not a lot of them out there. And I think that's definitely something that's being... The movie's saying this is good. Like, this is a good thing that people all, like, want to work together and help each other.
Yeah, we talked briefly on the Castle Pod about Miyazaki's notion of a supportive collective. This is a common recurring element I think you'll see throughout his movies. His ideal is people propping each other up and helping each other in the community. Certainly see that here. I think we've seen that from past movies, and we'll kind of but yeah, you're right. There's this whole other family with Granny. We didn't talk a lot about Granny until recently, or Nanny. Integrate, and they're all like, she's helping with the childcare, and there's this whole thing with, I think, giving the umbrella, a lot of giving people different umbrellas. Yeah, very very supportive movie, I would say, all around, all these actions. Get more into the characters a little bit. We've talked a lot about them already. Satsuki and Mei. One viewing I definitely like in the past, like, saw these as some of the most real kids I feel like I've seen in movies and TV. Satsuki and Mei, just their demeanors, and Mei very much feels like a young kid, and I think it's impressive how she's like realistically maybe like petulant and stuff at times, but still sympathetic and lovable. I think it's a good balance drawn in Satsuki. very like hardworking and supporting the family while still feeling like a kid. And I think, Maddie, so I love the Totoro dub because Satsuki and Mei are voiced by real life sisters, Dakota and Elle Fanning.
Oh my god, I should have known it was Dakota Fanning. I was like trying to figure out who the voice was.
When they were small children, though, so like they're around the ages of these characters, some of their first roles, just two very prominent like Hollywood sisters as kids voicing the sisters in this movie, like amazing.
That's actually really cool because you can tell from the movie that there is some amount of rapport with the actors, which is interesting considering they're both kids, but they definitely like. I would guess that they recorded their scenes in the same room together because they were just mostly acting off each other the whole time.
Yeah, I think so. There's a behind the scenes of the dub recording I'm going to dig up to which will show that. But just on that fact alone, I love the Disney Totoro dub.
I just know you love Dakota Fanning, Dylan.
Yeah, Elle Fanning. They're still in a bunch of stuff. It's like them being the sisters movie holds up, I think, as their cultural relevance. And it's, I don't know. I don't know about any
Dakota Fanning the woman in Jedlock? Am I remembering that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay,
correct.
the woman that didn't matter.
Yeah, we're not talking about Jedlock.
Sorry. I'm talking about Dakota Fanning, to be fair.
Delaney, yeah, it's related. Delaney, Satsuki and Mei thoughts that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, I'm such a sucker for sibling relationships, and this is like, it's like peak sibling relationship, and it's really like, it's so, like you were saying, it's so believable. Like they get to be kids, and it's not just that kind of like, it's not, Satsuki she's taken up a lot of responsibility, and she's very much the older sister, but then she also gets to be a kid, so that it just feels right. Like it feels so much more real as opposed to when you have like, the older sister who, can do anything and isn't allowed to like have emotions, or which I think is part of why when she breaks down, it's such a powerful scene because she's been so strong throughout the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good point. I got to read this Miyazaki quote about, Satsuki and then Mei too, kind of these aspects of Miyazaki. I think his personality rubs off on a lot of his characters, but specifically Satsuki and Mei being Miyazaki from Napier says, the two aspects of his personality project onto onto his child heroes. The dotty young Mei, who wears her emotions on her sleeve and actively enters the world of the fantastic, is closer to Miyazaki's heart, untouched by the family responsibilities Miyazaki had to take on in boyhood. Satsuki, in contrast, gets up early to cook the family's breakfast and takes up the mothering role towards Mei. Understandably, given her age and assumption of adult responsibilities, she is reluctant to believe in the fantasy world her sister wholeheartedly embraces. Ghibli's producer Suzuki recalls an angry discussion with Miyazaki in which Suzuki insisted that such a good kid as Satsuki couldn't possibly exist. Miyazaki furiously retorted, "She did exist! That was me!" There you go. That's my impression. So that's a good Miyazaki quote. I just want to read some other random Miyazaki quotes from this chapter in the Napier book. We're not going to end up reading the full thing, but he's talking about Miyazaki says he hates the Japanese economy and the Japanese people, and he says surely there's no more superficial people than the Japanese. They were not able to transcend the demon of rapid economic development. As a result, we have the corruption of the world, the loss of ideals, and the worship of material things. Angry Miyazaki. Also, there's a quote about ecology fascists, he says. So we'll be trying to read as many bombastic Miyazaki quotes as we can as we go on. But
I think it's interesting because you had a very similar quote for when we were talking about Castle. It seems like he has this fight like every time he makes a movie with kids, which is every movie. And I just find it really interesting because it really shows. It says a lot more about the adults than it does the kids, that they think kids are good. Because I don't think there are very few kids I meet that are like, this is a bad kid. Most kids are just having fun because they're kids.
Kids are good. That's the take. I like that take.
I mean, like, I don't really want kids, but they're like not mean people. They're just kids. They want to have fun. Some of them don't understand empathy quite yet, and they need help with that. But they don't actively try to hurt people.
Yeah, you're speaking Miyazaki's language here. I think that's totally where he's coming from. And I agree. That's what a lot of these movies, the characters kind of being these good people and these good kids, I think is about.
I also think it's interesting. Sorry, I forgot to mention that it's interesting that Miyazaki, he says that these two girls are him. It's just really interesting that he chose to make these two little girls represent himself from younger age.
Yeah. It is, and I think a lot of Miyazaki's protagonists, have aspects of his personality, and a lot of them end up being women and girls. And, you know, I think that's a large discussion on why this happens in terms of like what his mindset is and stuff in the book and in other places. But, you know, he wants to make a story he wants to make a story about two girls, and, you know, he taps into them with his aspects of his personality. And I think it's very admirable that he's able to kind of separate from, like, it's not just boy characters that would be him, you know, it's like he's just putting himself into whatever characters he wants to highlight in the movie.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing it says is that it shows that I think that these personality traits are a lot more acceptable in girl characters we see. If these were little boys, I don't know if, like, anyone would accept, like I would be fine with it, but I mean, like, I don't think that a general populace would be like, boys aren't like that. They're wild. They like try to break everything.
That's interesting. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. But anyway, the young boy we get is Kanta, who is maybe more of that type of character, or not that he's like destructive or anything, but his personality trait is crush on Satsuki.
And he's like self-sacrificing. Like he gives his umbrella to them when he doesn't need to. It's very a thing that like, it's put on boys, not girls, that they do that kind of thing. And it's just very interesting that there are these gender roles here, that even though he's trying to subvert them. And it's just interesting to see that. It's more like just these Miyazakian gender roles more than the normal ones.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think inevitably it would counter some of that, this being set in 50s Japan.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just commenting on it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's interesting commentary. I like it. We talked about the dad, and I think generally very good ideal dad for these girls to a certain aspect. Although, yeah, it'd be nice. It would be good if he was able to be more present and may not go missing and stuff. But what we see from him, we see is a lot of good moments in the movie. And any other comments on the dad? I think we covered it.
My favorite moment of the dad is having to have Satsuki come home to realize Mei has not come home for hours. Like,
yeah, that's not great.
He's such a great dad, except for this one moment he gets caught up in his work, and he's like, "Wait, we were supposed to eat lunch like an hour ago.
Yeah,
where is your sister?" And it's just such a dad thing on so many levels. But he clearly is fine. Like there's just so many different. There's so much in this movie that's just so different now culturally, because you would not let your kids out like this nowadays. Like, you just don't do that. You don't let your 4-year-old run around outside the house with no supervision. And that's
but it makes sense that this would be a thing in the 50s.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense in the context of this movie, but it's very different. And another very different thing is when they're all taking a bath together. Like, that seems like a Japanese thing more than
I think it's a Japanese cultural thing that probably doesn't translate super well, but I think it's fine. And like, I don't think it comes across badly.
No, it just
my
takes
dad.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think this communal bath in the house, though, it's a very Japanese type of area and stuff, and it being a regular optimistic occurrence, or I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah. The mom, so yeah, worth mentioning, I think we've vaguely alluded to it, but Miyazaki's mom, as I've referenced on the podcast, bedridden through most of his life, does die when he's an adult. She had tuberculosis, which the mom in this movie it's not stated in the movie, but is the major reading of the movie would be that's what she has. So, I think I wouldn't say this is a direct stand-in for Miyazaki's mom. I think we've talked about previous characters that are also that are have aspects of her personality. I mean, apparently more of a bombastic personality, like in Castle, but in in this movie, I think just her being sick and like that weighing on the kids and like them having to deal with it and take up more responsibility is definitely indicative of what he went through as a kid. And not much to say about the mom, I would say, herself.
Well, it's just such a good and that's, I enjoy stories where like the conflict isn't the parents versus the kids. Like they are dealing with things outside of their control, but they are like a unit. And that's, that's why the bath scene is so sweet. And, the way the dad interacts with the kids and like the letters to the mom, like everything like that is just it's so sweet.
Yeah. Letters are good. I do like that a lot. Yeah. Yeah, and then Nanny or Granny, who we've talked about, another as we're tracking kind of older female characters in Miyazaki's movies, another notable one here. She's good. I like the scene with the picking the core, and I think that's a very notable one. Yeah, but not a lot else to say about that. I forgot to comment on this before, but I like Delaney's earlier analysis of this being a very emotionally driven movie. I would say it's a very thematic and emotionally driven movie. There's not a lot of plot backing that drives the movie. I don't know if there's like these crazy character arcs that are going from start to finish, although like they're dealing with their, this time of unrest, I would say, is the overarching thing that's going on with the girls. The move and dealing with their mom being in the hospital, but so I think that the character analysis is not going to be as maybe in depth as some of these other things we're talking about.
Well, it's so interesting, this movie, that they're just reacting to things that are happening to them, which I think is part of what makes the magic so compelling, is because they need the magic, and like to have that help, like to, it makes. It's like you were saying earlier, it's so cathartic. And these are things outside of their control. And, they need a little magic to get through it because, it's not really up to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also like that notion of like the antagonistic force is like something outside of their control. And like the movie is just them grappling with that basically.
And it's just life. It's not.
It is just life. Yeah. Yeah. Quickly on animation influences segment. I don't have a lot for this one, but we're talking about the kid's perspective. I mean, I think like a Steven and Steven Universe, where we see it through his perspective, potentially influenced by this. The big obvious one is Appa in Avatar is the cat bus.
He's much better. I would much rather ride Appa than the cat bus.
Much better than the cat bus.
Bold take.
In terms of rideability. But see, in the Appa, you have to ride on top. You have to grab on, less secure. Cat bus is an inside. But you don't have to ride
inside of Appa.
Wouldn't it be interesting if you did, though?
It wouldn't be interesting. It would be terrifying.
Appa's like a very sweet, gentle creature. Cat bus is, I think, it comes across more mischievously, at least with his.
Yeah, that's why I don't want to ride inside it, Dylan, because I don't know what that cat's going to do to me.
Oh, since I just said he for cat bus, I want to say Totoro. I'm not sure it's even gendered in the original Japanese, but I think we inevitably call Totoro male.
I think they used male pronouns one time in the dub, but I might be incorrect on that.
But like, we totally think of that, and the cat bus, we totally think of them as male creatures. It's a very American sense of anthropomorphizing.
Yeah, monsters are male.
We always, just generally, I think, things that don't have explicitly female genders, we think of as male.
Well, quote unquote, the default.
Yeah. I think that's not the case in Japan. Actually, we'll talk about that with Kiki's next week. I believe that there's a big difference between the sub and the dub with Kiki's on that.
Oh, interesting.
So, lead into there. Okay, let's talk about the score.
Yes, music.
Yeah. You already had a great analysis of it in the beginning.
Yeah, I know. I don't have much more to say, Dylan. I just like the music.
Yeah, so I'll highlight some of and trying to listen to it, to highlight some of the big ones. I mean, obviously the ending song, My Neighbor Totoro ending theme, which I think instrumentally pops up earlier in the movie too. The Totoro, right?
It's actually through the movie, yeah.
Throughout the whole movie. I've tried to isolate some of my favorite tracks, but there's really just these themes that recur throughout every track. which I think is a Hisaishi thing. It's like my other than the Totoro, like that, I love that. And then the other big thing I live is the trees theme.
Yes.
Like the tree has a theme, and I think it's most notable in the track on the soundtrack, A Huge Tree in the Sukamori Forest. But the tree has a theme is a very Miyazaki sentence.
Yeah, that's so good.
I think that's what
it's so good.
You could say it's the forest theme or nature's theme, but it's definitely the tree is this
tree has a theme.
Yeah, and it's dun 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 dun. I don't know. I'm not going to do it right, but one of my most memorable sounds of a Miyazaki movie, just the general beat or whatever of this kind of recurring thing throughout the movie. I think it's captures the magic of what Totoro is going for.
Well, there's a lot of these, like, in this movie, a lot of big sounds, but quiet. And I think I really enjoy that for, like, you know, just, and because it sounds so stupid to say this out loud, but Miyazaki's movies are so visual, like, where there's no dialogue, and there are a lot of scenes in this film where there's no music, which, like, all of the rain, I'm all about the rain sounds. All of the rain scenes in this movie are great. But, like, these, you know, the music behind these scenes of, you know, the countryside or looking at the forest, they're just so powerful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I said, when I'm talking about Miyazaki's approach to movies, it's inherently visual. He doesn't even do a script most of the time. He just does images straight into storyboards. It's like inherently the most visual. And I think that's why it fits with kind of Hisaishi's minimalism. Although there's like, it's tempting to not see that in terms of there's these just iconic tracks for a lot of these movies, and you're just like, oh, there's so much music, but there's really much less music than your average movie in them.
It's more impressive though, Dylan, than that there's iconic tracks, that there are, in this movie, despite the minimalism, there are consistent melodies. There are consistent, like, I'm forgetting the word. I'm feeling really bad about it. Motifs. Yep. Thank you. Boom. Motifs. And they come back again and again and again, specifically the motif when Mei and Satsuki are playing together right after they move into the house. They're outside, and there's this or just Mei, I'm sorry. And it's this very, it's this motif that's used over and over and over again through the movie. And I won't hum it because that's not going to be fun for anyone to listen to. But it's just, if you go back and listen to that scene, it's kind of the framework for all the music of the movie. And I find that really, really good. Like, setting up your songs, music is very, like, soundtracks are very different than, like, the actual movie, because in a movie you want to foreshadow, but you don't want to tell too much. But in a movie, counterintuitively, you kind of want to give the audience all the music up front. You want to front load them so they know that when they hear a musical cue, they kind of know what's happening before they can even consciously acknowledge it. You want a character to be assigned a cue or a little ditty, so that when you hear it, you get excited before you even realize you're getting excited. But you can't do that if you only have that theme show up when that character finally shows up near the end of the movie or something. And it's very counterintuitive to the rest of, I think, movie making.
Yeah, I think it's a great point that despite like, you know, how much ever percent of this movie taking place in silence, or at least without music, like some 30 to some 40, something like, you know, there are these iconic motifs that, yeah, I think this movie is a great example of that. Yeah, you mentioned, I don't know if this is the same one you're talking about, but the track, The Village in May in the beginning.
It's probably that one. That's probably the one.
The house is that's one of my favorites too. And then there's Moonlight Flight, which is an instrumental version of the End Totoro theme, but whole soundtrack really good. Let's see how many times I say this throughout the series, but probably my new favorite in terms of listening to the soundtracks, paying more attention on this watch through. Castle's really good. Nazca's really good. I think this is probably my current favorite, so we'll see. I mean, Spirited Away is probably going to top it all, but we'll see about that.
I like this one more as like a companion to the movie. Like, it fits the tone. It like very perfectly captures what's going on. There's very little brass, and the brass that there is either very quiet or muted. Like, there's muted trumpets in the background at the climax of the movie at the end with the cat bus. Like, a lot of them like just blowing that very like meh, like noise. It's very, very, very distinct. But Castle has, I think, more range in its music, and it's a lot more interesting to listen to on its own.
Yeah, nice. And last one I mentioned, the intro song, Hey, Let's Go, is over the intro credits is really good too. Last thing, want to make sure to touch on all the notable scenes I had written down. I think we talked about most of them. The one we haven't talked quite as much about is the sprouting of the seeds with Totoro, and then they ride the wind. Arguably the most magical scene of the movie, I would say. That comes right after the bus stop scene, which I did talk, I think, enough about that, but that one's also incredibly magical. But yeah, going right into the bus stop, into the seeds and Totoro, and is pretty high point of the movie. And then we get into the drama, I think, after that. Mei meeting Totoro in the tree, and then in the beginning, Mei and the suit sprites. Yeah, those kind of all my favorite scenes.
Mei meeting Totoro opening his mouth the first time is terrifying.
You think he's gonna eat Mei?
I mean, I knew he wasn't, but I mean, also his mouth was huge.
What if he did though?
His mouth was very Appa-esque.
Yeah, maybe Appa is a Totoro cat bus blend.
Like it very much looked like. I mean, it very much looked like it. Like it was very much the same structure to it with the herbivorous teeth in there.
Yeah. Okay.
I will say upon rewatch that the scene I was most looking forward to was the sprouting. Like I was like getting amped up when I knew, like when it was coming. Like when they get them the seeds, and I was like, oh boy, they're gonna grow the seeds. Like
injected into my veins. Give me the seeds.
Yeah, so it's such a beautiful scene, and I love the like when they come in and they're dancing, and then the kids join, and then like obviously it's beautiful. Like this is this is that scene in every movie that's just midnight flight, like so gorgeous, and and just watching the tree grow and they go all the way up, and just I love it when they play like the horns with him, and then the next morning they wake up and they run around doing the dance again. Oh, it's like that. It's the happiest part of the movie. And it's just so beautiful. And they're so cute. Everyone is so cute.
Yeah. I'm always amazed by that scene, I'll say.
Like it doesn't matter how many times I'm going to watch it. It just feels so good. It is the snackiest part of the movie.
Snackiest part.
This is the junk food right here. This is the snack.
Back to the junk food in my eyes. Yeah.
Yes.
I agree. That's
and for your soul.
I think the soul is a more conventional way of saying that.
Well, there's junk food for your eyes, and that like it.
I'm just saying I've never heard that phrase before.
Yeah, no, I've definitely never. Like it's like chicken for the soul. No, junk food for the soul.
Here you go. Delaney exclusive.
It's a Delaney version.
So it makes you happy, but it's inevitably bad for you? Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't think we're concerned with the bad for you.
I really like junk food.
Okay, we're just not
make you happy part.
We're not going to worry about it.
Yeah. Just the bus stop into the sprouting. Yeah, just pure magic, and then like that magic of the ending too. Played really well this time, and Totoro, under 90-minute movie. I think it does feel longer than that, probably. But certainly not the epic lengths of some others we'll see.
Not nearly as long as Spirited Away.
Yeah, again, Spirited Away, only 2 hours, 5 minutes,
It's only 2 hours.
It's really not that long. But
I guess a 4 hour. Like, I like Spirited Away. Like, I don't want to, but
we'll talk about it when we get to it.
So
I think its immersiveness makes it longer. In my head, Nausicaa is always 2:45, and it's only 2 hours. So
yeah, that's fair.
Miyazaki's movies have these qualities sometimes. Delaney, closing thoughts on My Neighbor Totoro, though.
This is definitely making me appreciate like the rewatchability of Ghibli movies, like what you were saying, that there's always something new to get, and because these movies are such a journey. And again, I have to watch all of the Ghibli movies because they're so great, but Totoro is just such a happy movie. And it's just so nice to watch. And I really appreciated like getting to watch it again, and especially to explore more of the environmentalism like aspects of the movie instead of just taking it at face value.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I think at the very least the iconic Miyazaki movies are kind of infinitely rewatchable. Your Nausicaa, Castle, this one. And we'll see which else we'd put in that group. Most of them, I would say, all of Miyazaki's. It's this movie. I could watch this movie again tonight.
Same. I could watch this every night to go to bed.
It's probably the most rewatchable one, just because of how happy it is. Yeah, it's like whenever you can put this on.
I might need a break. I just finished watching it.
Well, you just finished it, yeah. So what are your closing thoughts, Matt?
I think that it's interesting because I watched a few Ghibli movies when I was younger. Like I saw Mononoke and Spirited Away notably when I was younger, and then some a little later when I was in like my later teens. But other than that, there's been a huge like just blank space where I didn't keep up to try to watch them all. And I think this one might have been a little overhyped for me, where it was just that I didn't know what I was going to expect. I knew a lot of people knew it as their favorite, and I thought it was very cute, very fun, very good. Like, I don't think it's a bad movie. It's just, I don't think it could ever reach the heights that it was overhyped to for me.
Yeah, I think that is valid. That's kind of what I experienced when I was younger. Like, this is one of the movies you'll hear about a lot. And some people you'll read lists, this is number one of whatever all time. You'll see some lists like that. So I do think this is like very hyped up, and it's not the type of movie that should be hyped up like that. It's a very quiet, like realistic movie. So it doesn't, I think, play well with the expectations. It took me a while to get there, I think, with it. I think I had that impression at first too.
Like people hyping up Spirited Away, like it made sense when I saw it as when I was younger.
It's epic. It rises to it.
Yeah.
This movie is quieter. Yeah. So and you just see this everywhere. But there's also, there's definitely a large contingent of like Miyazaki diehards that wouldn't put this in their top 5. I think it's like everyone thinks it's great. I think a lot of people wouldn't put it right up there. I'd say I used to be that, but after this viewing, for me, this is right there, right below the best of the best. So I'm gonna heavily consider this in the top 5, like right in Castle of the Sky territory. Kind of right about that for me, which is, right below your Spirited Aways, which we'll see when we get to all the rest of these movies. And we got Kiki's Delivery Service next week. I think a good companion to, I said some things how like most Miyazaki movies are epic fantasies except for this one, but Kiki's also very grounded, but it's just more of a world of magic. Yeah, well, we'll talk about the cat. Yeah, that was kind of what I was referring to with the gendered creature. So we'll see how that's handled in both versions and stuff. This movie is a cat too, so very similar movies.
Oh my god, I know it's a hot take, but I hate Cat Bus so much. I really do. This is not me like.
When will you learn to love Cat Bus?
It's not like an exaggeration. Like I'm not exaggerating for effect here, Dylan. I legitimately hate Cat Bus. It makes me uncomfortable.
I don't know if anyone stands Cat Bus, so I don't know if it's like
it was definitely something I knew was going to happen. Everyone says, "Hey, Cat Bus is coming," and I've seen I think images of it, like models of it, but seeing it in motion, seeing it actually do its thing is like, this is horrifying. Who would love this? Yeah,
well, there's a Cat Bus in the Ghibli Museum, and that the kids jump on, so kids love it, I guess.
Kids are wrong.
You keep watching Totoro until you learn to love Cat Bus. That's the challenge here. We'll see how many viewings it takes. Concurrently, over and over until
I put it on nonstop in the background, no matter what.
Until you admit to love
Clockwork Orange, but Totoro.
Yeah, I don't know how many it would take, but okay. We'll see. That's the opinion we'll get from everyone on this podcast. What are your Cat Bus thoughts? Is it strong love, strong hate, somewhere in the middle? I feel like most people are going to be somewhere in the middle on Cat Bus. Cat Bus is magical. I don't know if it's like a creature you love and you...
I love the Cat Bus. It's a cat.
You love the Cat Bus. Yeah, I mean, it is a cat. Hard to argue against that. You go inside the cat. How do you hate that? How would you...
And it looks so comfy. She sinks into the seats. It's so cute.
Yeah. That's either... comfy or horrifying, depending on your perspective.
It looks comfy as heck. I'm just saying that because it's alive, I'm terrified of it.
Cat Bus, take me away.
Take us away, Cat Bus, and the Cat Bus won't hurt you, Maddie. That's the other response I have. It won't hurt you.
I'm sure Cat Bus won't hurt me, Dylan. But I don't want to risk
It's not coming here. It could probably come here pretty quickly, though. It's probably
that's what I don't like about it.
It's probably Santa Claus.
Really, Santa should use the Cat Bus.
That is the hottest take.
Oh my god, like Santa's sleigh being dragged by cat bus through
No,
the air.
it is the cat bus. He just has the presents inside
Oh,
the cat
he's
bus.
riding inside it, like along
Just
the power
riding
line.
the cat bus.
I will say, I really like the scenes of like the cat bus like running along different things. Like the power lines was really, really fun.
I like that too, yeah. Okay, so yeah, like I said, any Totoro thoughts in the comments section anywhere you're listening, find all those links at overlyanimated.com. We will be continuing our Ghibli Rewatch series, so subscribe to make sure you don't miss future Ghibli podcasts. And if you want to support us, you can do so at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Reshipu, and thanks as always to our patron executive producers Ryan, Steve, Alex, Beatrice, Hugh, Michael, Needle, and Phonician. Check out other stuff we got going on at overlyanimated.com, and we'll be back to talk Kiki's delivery service next time. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.